Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. Thanks a lot for taking the time to join us today, where we're going to look at how you can supercharge your business with Avid Edit on Demand. Here's a quick look at the agenda for today. We're going to do some introductions. We're then going to give you a quick overview of what Edit on Demand is. We're then going to look at some of the business benefits, and we're also going to demonstrate how simple it is to set up Edit on Demand and also then to keep track of everything that's going on. And we're also going to have a live question and answer session as well. So today's presenters, my name's Craig Wilson. I'm the product evangelist for Media and Cloud here at Avid. And with me today is Danny Hollingsworth. Danny is our business development manager for Cloud and SaaS. Now, of course, we want this to be an interactive webinar, so I'm sure we've all been on lots of webinars over the course of the last couple of years. So if you've joined on the Zoom webinar, then please feel free to submit your questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, and we'll do our best to either answer them in the Q&A chat or to answer them live in the webinar itself. If you have joined on one of the Avid social channels, first of all, thanks a lot for taking the time to join us. Then again, please put your questions in there. We'll be monitoring the social channels, and we will answer the questions live in the course of the webinar as best we can. So, just a little bit before we get going about really what is Avid Edit on Demand. So a few things to talk about it, but basically it is secure cloud-hosted virtual production system for remote teams. It enables remote collaboration. It enables teams to work together, even if they are much further apart or working in a distributed way. It's super simple to set up. There's also easy ways to check out your pricing and to follow your billing. Really importantly, there's no prior cloud knowledge needed, and Danny will talk a little bit more about what's involved in that and how things can get set up. It can also extend your on-premise workflows. So you can have a system on-premise that you want to connect and run perhaps some other workflows that you can run in the cloud. You can do that with Avid Edit on Demand as well. And as I mentioned, it is all about collaborating remotely with distributed teams, something which, of course, over the course of the last few years has become much, much more prevalent as we've gone through the pandemic, and even now coming out from the pandemic as well. That remote workflow is still something that's very, very prevalent, and I think most of us think will be here for some time to stay. Now let's begin to dive into a bit more of the detail on Edit on Demand. And for that, we're first of all going to look about where Edit on Demand is available. And for that, I'm going to hand over to Danny. So Danny, take it away.
Thanks, Craig. So as Craig said, we're utilizing the power of the cloud here to be able to enable post-production workflows in a distributed fashion. And as such, we are available in a number of locations globally. Today, there's 8 data centers available today, and we're always looking to expand our capabilities elsewhere as well. But that gives us good coverage in a number of different areas. And really, one of the questions that often comes up, and we spoke about in the previous webinar that Craig and I did recently, is about latency for editors and bandwidth requirements as well. And you can see there, we typically talk about around 60 milliseconds or less for the under the desk type offline editing experience. And we also have people on much higher bandwidths than that as well. Latencies than that, but also bandwidth wise, we recommend sort of 20 to 25 megabits per second for a full frame of HD. And we showed in the previous webinar how that's variable, and actually some people are running with less than that, and some people have multiple screens and using more bandwidth than that as well. But really, there's really good coverage, and what you should be thinking about is where is my editorial happening? Where are most of the editors that need to be able to connect into the systems. But I think from a business perspective, the really interesting thing here is suddenly you're actually also potentially available to expand your business outside your local region as well. Suddenly you can spin up and provision in areas outside of your local geography, and have availability in other data centers around the globe if you require. And I think we'll jump onto the next slide, Craig. And so maybe we can talk about some of those areas, some of those challenges. So I mentioned there about the distributed nature of where we are right now, and I think that comes in a number of different fashions. And we talk about distributed teams when we think about, editorial teams, but actually, as engineering teams, management teams, production teams, the whole team could be distributed, including the people that need to provision and actually deploy. And suddenly, edit on demand really enables us to auto provision resources in a much quicker time than setting up physical systems, right? You're not having to hire something in, have it delivered to a location, have someone at that location to set it up. You can do all of this remotely, and we're going to show you how quick and simple that is today. But actually, it's also about reducing the distance between all of the workers, right? So everyone that's involved in the creation and the creative process, all being able to have work together as if they're all in the same space. But actually, everything is deployed in the cloud for them. And when we talk about collaboration, then and actually these people collaborating and creativity, we can talk about those pieces together. As a business, you actually can start unlocking talent outside of your local areas as well. Typically it used to be, can people come into our local facility? Or even if you have remote access to your facility, you're often bound by restraints of your networks, the quality of service. Suddenly, if there's teams, great creative teams in another location, you can access those really easily and spin up, resources where those teams are, and actually bring in that talent, where the talent is, without having to, just use what is local to you. We know that talent is something that it's hard to come by, and actually, instead of trying to build a physical location and try and bring talent there, suddenly you can expose talent in all different locations and have access to talent everywhere. And I think as a lot of people are looking at their business today and thinking about the cloud and like, how can we use the cloud? Should we use the cloud? Do we do everything in the cloud? And I think these are some of the things we can talk about. And one of the big fears comes up around is expertise. Like, do we have to have, we really want to start leveraging the power of an on-demand service where we can spin stuff up, rapidly and in a really flexible fashion. But we don't necessarily have big engineering teams that are all kind of cloud certified to be able to go and build this stuff. Actually, edit on demand, is super simple, and I'm going to show you how simple it is today to really start accessing the power of the cloud without having to have great resources behind you to be able to go and do that stuff. It's there at a touch of a button, and we'll look at that in more detail. And when we start talking about speed and efficiency as well, I think that's also, that's the reason why people are often looking at the cloud as well. Is yes, distributed working is a big piece, but it's about that agility and really the power of being able to build systems in an hour, a few hours, and actually add things like seats and storage in minutes. And so we'll look at that as well, and the real kind of speed that you get. Which obviously then enables you to take on new business, which we'll talk about as well. And then the last piece is security. I think one of the things when people look at the cloud is they have questions about is it secure? And actually, I think it's the conversation is changing and changed, and people are realizing the benefit of the cloud in terms of the amount of resource that goes into securing those infrastructures, and you really are leveraging like the best in cloud, best in service for cloud security and infrastructure, and when you're utilizing edit on demand. And we do some great work to make sure that we go through a whole range of different auditing processes, and really the system was designed from the ground up around making sure content is secure, and that other folks can't see other people's content and things like that. So we'll touch on that a little bit further as well. But really, edit on demand enables you to answer all of these different components in one go, in one hit. And if we go on to the next slide, Craig. So just some kind of three kind of key areas that we see people talking about is and edit on demand answers is capacity constraints, and people are talking about, okay, I've kind of reaching capacity of what I've built today myself on premise. What do I do next? Do we expand it? If we expand it, what does that look like? And how big do we expand? I think one of the things I'm seeing a lot at the moment, and a lot of people, businesses talking about, is there's some uncertainty, right? There's uncertainty around there's been a backlog of content that needs to be created. Well, what happens after we finish the backlog, right? Where do we go from there? And do we really want to invest in something that we know could have to scale back down as well, right? And so giving yourself the ability to, open up your capacity constraints without the fear of, long-term investment in something that may change as well. Also, what happens if you build something large and then you hit the wall again, hit the ceiling? Where do you go from there? So edit on demand is a great way to kind of open up all of those fears around, what do you do next, and can we take on more work while it's here? And work more efficiently as well is obviously really important. And being able to, attract new businesses and new business opportunities by rapidly being able to deploy, right, and being able to bring teams in a flexible and rapid fashion is something that we're really keen to push on with Edit on Demand. And obviously all of that enables you to be more productive, right? It's cliche to say do more for less, right? That's what we're trying to do. And Edit on Demand is a great way of being able to do that. Suddenly you can take on more work quicker and faster in a more reliable fashion. And if we go on to the next one, Craig, so just we mentioned creativity, lowering costs, being able to have more flexibility over your cost management and manage your costs is really key, right? There's a lot of businesses are looking, how do we shift away from capital expense to operational expense and OPEX? Edit on Demand is a great way to do that, right? Alongside maybe what you're doing with CapEx, or maybe you really want to innovate and go completely OPEX, and it's a great way. Edit on Demand is a great way to kind of get into that new way of managing your business, and give that freedom to scale, which we mentioned. Being able to go from nothing to seats in a matter of minutes, and then go up from there, right? So if things change and your schedules change and your productions change, you go up and down as you see. You can flex up and down what you need when you need it. And I think the really key thing here is these are reliable, known workflows. I think with Edit on Demand, we're not trying to kind of bring something that no one understands. None of your editorial teams are going to understand it. It's Media Composer, it's Nexus, it's the things that they rely on and trust on-prem, but now with the flexibility and the agility, of the cloud to support them as well. So being able to bring teams in is really easy because it's the tools and the workflows that they already know and understand. And then, so just to quickly just go over a couple of highlights on the business benefits here, and just talk about, four key pieces that we really want to, hit home is, Edit on Demand enables you to take on new business. We're at a time right now, where there's a lot of business out there, right? There's especially at this time of year, there's a lot of content that needs to be created. All of these distribution platforms are all desperate to fulfill a whole range of content that, like I said, is still, we're kind of still seeing some of the tail end of that backlog from the pandemic, right? How can you get in there and actually address that? If you've built systems on premise today, you might already be at capacity, or if you want to try and build something on premise, you're going to have to try and build for some sort of peak that you're effectively kind of guessing for. And then what happens when you hit that peak? Suddenly, Edit on Demand enables you to take on that new business, rapidly. So rather than the conversation being how long does it take us to hire something in, bring it in, build it, have people provision that, carve it, or all the storage up, all of those pieces. Actually, you can say yes, we can do that tomorrow for you if you need to, right? It's that kind of speed to actually take on new business, and also take on business that you might not be able to do today. Like if you other regions where you might think, okay, we could do that, but we don't have editorial. We know some editorial teams there, but we don't have a system there. Actually, you can go and deploy a system in that region and bring the editorial teams to it. And obviously saving time is a really key one. And I mentioned that, being able to automate the deployment. You're going to see this it's very light touch. You're not going there and building systems and managing. You don't need big engineering teams to go and do this. It's a few clicks and the system's deployed for you. So rather than buying for peak capacity, you can rapidly provision your capability as you need it. And I think people looking to innovate, we know there's businesses out there that are starting up, or folks that have worked for businesses and they're looking to go and really kind of innovate and disrupt the marketplace as well. Edit on Demand enables you to do that. You can really start leveraging the power of the cloud and minimal cloud expertise, but also minimal investment. So suddenly you can go in there and say, do you know, we might not have huge capital right now to go and build and rent physical location, bring in physical kit, buy that kit, have that capital expense. But you may be able to know that there's a product available that you have the talent to go and fulfill. So actually you can use Edit on Demand to go and fulfill that and spin up a system as you need it. And then as your business scales, Edit on Demand can scale with you rather than you having to, like I said, buy for that kind of peak, possible peak that you may get. And touching on that, managing your total cost of ownership, right? And I think that's something that's really key. You can see we've got a couple of graphs there of like OPEX versus CAPEX. This is just an example, right? But you can see the OPEX model enables you to start really rapidly with a very low investment. And then as your business grows, it can grow with you. Rather than with the CAPEX is what we often see is people, there's a big amount of cost up front, and then there's maybe a managed cost throughout. But you are sort of building and you're sort of thinking about what that peak is. And actually your usage may be lower than that. So the great thing with Edit on Demand and that OPEX model is it enables you to not just take on new business as it comes, but also, you're not spending what you don't need, right? And you're not, you haven't got stuff sat there being called, being stored, being maintained, being managed. That's not actually being used, and you're waiting for that next project to come along. I mean, that's a really key part of the conversation, and for folks to start thinking about not just what's the cost of the software and some storage costs, but what does it cost us to actually get that stuff in? How long does it take us to get it? How long does it take us to spin it up? What does it cost us to actually call that, put it in, store it physically, like to rent it and actually have a physical location? All of those are really big key questions that a lot of businesses are looking at, both existing and new businesses. And Edit on Demand is a great way to dive in and start taking a look at the power and the flexibility that SaaS and on demand gives you. And so with that, I think we will jump in and maybe look at a live demo, Craig.
Yeah, Danny, I was going to give you a little second to grab a breath there, and just to say lots and lots of great information that Danny's given there of the kind of background to Edit on Demand and obviously what some of the benefits of it can be. So again, I'm sure you got lots of questions. Please feel free, pop the questions in the Q&A box or pop them in the chats on social media, and we'll do our best to answer them. But for that, I will hand you back to Danny. So Danny, you can take over the share.
Thanks so much, Craig. All right. So we kind of spoke about some of the benefits, and there's a lot of things in there. We talk about flexibility, we talk about agility, and speed, and the power of on demand. But let's show you it, right? Rather than just kind of keep throwing buzzwords at you, and show you the reality of what Edit on Demand actually enables you to do. So I mentioned you didn't really need kind of deep cloud expertise to go and build and make this stuff available. And I'm going to show you that now just through my Avid account. So you can see here I'm on the Avid website. I'm just going to go to my Avid account and log in. You see I've logged into my Avid account here, and I'm just going to go before I go to view my products. The first thing that you would do at this point is if you wanted to buy some credits, then you would purchase them from a local partner, and I'll show you how to do that in a moment as well, or through I would say contact your local Avid either partner or representative in your region and have that discussion. You would get the credits sent to you, and you'll be redeemed the same way that you would register your normal software. So if you're used to using Media Composer, you would go in here and redeem those credits, and then once they're redeemed, if I go to view my products here, you will see you get your Avid Edit on Demand credits in your account. And the way that Edit on Demand works is that today there's no after billing. Everything you purchase, or your credits that you purchase up front, so you know what you're spending and when you're spending it. And then you can deploy those credits as you see fit. So when you need more seats, more storage, you can deploy them. And if you need more, you can buy more. But you're not kind of, I think one of the things that a lot of businesses look at and they think about the cloud is they think it's this kind of ever growing bill that they're going to get at the end of the month, and then what if people use more, right? So the great thing about Edit on Demand is what you spend up front is what you have available to use, so you know exactly what you're spending and when you're spending it. So the three main credit types that we see is our base credit, and we'll talk about that. That gives you all of the deployment pieces, all of the kind of the back end for the remote access, some of the stuff we showed in the last webinar, accessing the media composers through the Teradata client. All of those components are in that base subscription, as well as your 1 terabyte download egress as well. So that's what you can download to your local systems, which we spoke about previously. And then you have some service credit types. So we've got our storage credits. So each 1 credit equals 1 terabyte here, and our seat credits. And these can be bought in either weekly or a monthly subscription. So this particular set of credits is actually a weekly subscription credits. So I can change this dynamically as I want on a week-to-week basis. You can see I also have an existing subscription, which we'll take a look at in a moment as well. So if you want to actually go and deploy a system, so right now, let's talk, imagine there's no system deployed, but I have some credits available to go and deploy a system. How easy and simple is it to make a system available? All I would have to do is go and use my credits, and then I'm going to create a new subscription from those credits. So these credits can be used to create multiple subscriptions if I wanted to, right? You could have multiple EOD environments all running at the same time if you wanted to. Or if you have an existing subscription, you could also use those credits to update an existing one. So you might want to add some more seats or add some more storage to an existing system. I'm going to go create a new subscription there and hit confirm. And then you'll see what credits I have available. So I just have credits for one region, our West Europe region, but you may have credits for multiple different locations. I mentioned earlier, you might want to start spinning up systems in locations outside of your local region, right? And you might have credits for, maybe West US, and you might have teams in LA who want to do some editing. You can spin up a system using some West US credits if you had those. Today, though, I've got just some West Europe ones, and you can see the different quantities I have of our weekly credits. So I could have up to 20 weeks here, and I've got up to 60 terabytes of storage to carve out over those weeks. And I have I have 20 seats, I meant to say, and I have up to 6 weeks of edit on demand available to me. So let's take a look. I mentioned I've got week credits here. If you had monthly, you could see monthly there as well. You can pick a start date. So maybe you want to provision beforehand. One of the things we often see, though, is actually people don't have that much visibility of when a production is starting. And edit on demand gives you the flexibility to say, yeah, we can, you want to start that tomorrow, we can do that. And suddenly you can, start accessing, new work and new business that you might not have been able to, provision and access before. So you could do it up front, or you could say we want to start it today. And then you can start adding a week. So maybe we've got a 4-week production that comes in, for instance. Someone says we need 4 weeks of production, and you say, that's great, we can do that. How many seats do you need each week? And the great thing here is you wouldn't have to, if someone said we need a maximum of 4 seats, then suddenly you're going to have 4 seats for 4 weeks. Actually, we realized that the first week we only need one editor because they're just going to do some prep. And then maybe the second week we've got an editor and an assistant in there. And then our third and our fourth weeks are the real kind of crunch weeks, where that's really where we're getting people coming in and doing, all the editing. They might have 4 seats for the last 2 weeks. So you have that real flexibility to, add seats when you need them. You may even say, actually, on the 4th week, we're going to ramp the whole production down. So actually, maybe we just want 1 seat. So you can go in both directions. You can go, up and down with your seats, but also your storage. So the second set of credits I'm going to add here is my storage. And then maybe we're going to have, just a 3 terabytes in the first week, 4 terabytes in the second week. And then maybe we start going up to, say, 10 terabytes in week 2, and then back down. Again, we can go back down in our last week as we start moving, deleting content off the system, and we start spinning the production down. So you see, you get a lot of flexibility, even at a very granular level for folks that maybe know Nexus. You're used to buying in chunks, right? And what might happen is you might buy, say, 20 terabytes or 40 terabytes or 60 terabytes, whatever it is. And then you might hit, capacity there. And then what happens next? You have to buy in another chunk of Nexus or hire in another chunk. And now you can really provision for what you need and when you need it. So if someone says, I need another 5 terabytes or another 6 terabytes, you can do that. Also, I'm provisioning some stuff up front here. If this changes at any point, and as we're in the production and they say week 2, we need another editor or we need another 5 terabytes, you can absolutely do that, right? You can add and update subscriptions as you go as well. So you don't have to get it all right in the first go, but I'm going to deploy, say, 4 weeks here up front, and then we'll adapt as our production adapts. And if it gets bigger, we'll add more seats and storage as we need. And then you choose your versions, and we typically, I mentioned about having access to the latest and greatest is one of the things that you suddenly have access to. You're not having to worry about, do we buy something? Is it going to be out of date in a year? Actually, you can access the latest version of the Media Composer when you need them here. Or if you want to have a long-term maintenance release, something that maybe some of your editors are a bit more comfortable with and not necessarily taking the latest version, you can also do that as well and take a previous version, which is obviously highly patched here and highly stable. And then you'll give your system a name. So for instance, we're going to call this one Webinar 1. And that would be our prefix for our system name. We haven't deployed anything yet, but very simply, you can see how easy it was to add some credits. So we've added seats of Media Composer, we've added some storage here. And then if we're happy, we would hit accept, and then we would go and hit create subscription. And at that point, it would take about an hour or so, and then your system starts to become available for people to use. So really rapid, and you're deploying, say, in that first week, 1 seat and 3 terabytes, but you could deploy multiple seats in one go, multiple terabytes in one go, and all of that Nexus deployment, all of that Media Composer deployment is all in automated, right? You're not having to go in here and build this stuff. We're not just giving you some storage and some seats, and then you have to go and configure your Media Composer. All of the licensing is all bundled in and included, and it's all deployed in an automated fashion for you. So you would hit create subscription, and away you would go. Once that's done, you will get a mail back to say, hey, it's ready for you to go in and start adding your users. And so maybe we'll take a look at that. So I'm not gonna deploy that system. I'm just gonna hit cancel. Funnily enough, I have a system that I made earlier, which we'll take a look at. So you can see we have our edit on demand subscription. That this one's already in play, and you can see we've got a bunch of seats and a bunch of storage here. And you may notice in this particular subscription, it actually says we have some standard and advanced seats. And one of the things I didn't mention was there is actually 2 seat types. There's in the standard and advanced. Effectively, the advanced gives you some greater CPU capability for maybe some higher end workflows that require that. But there's some flexibilities in the seat type that you choose depending on your workflow. And in fact, you can have a mixture of both as well inside a single subscription. So you don't have to pick one or the other, and you can mix and match your seat types as you need. You can see when our subscription expires. So this is already deployed. You can see our prefix name there as well. And if you wanted to add more seats and storage at any time, you could do that using the update subscription button, and you would go in and add, just the same way you saw that form that I had earlier. You would be able to go in and add in additional seats and storage as you need. But if you want to manage that system, you actually will have access to what we call the Avid on-demand portal. So let's open that up and take a look at the portal. So once the system is deployed, like I said, it's about an hour or so, you'll get a mail back, and then you'll be able to access the portal. From the portal, you'll get total visibility of your system. So this is really for administrators, but it's really simple. Yeah, this is not like I said, you're not having to do hours and hours and hours of cloud expertise and cloud certification to go and do this stuff, right? This is really simple, easy to use portal where you can see what have I got deployed. So you can see how much storage I have currently deployed, how much of that is being used as well. And then also how much data egress. And we mentioned egress, and that's really is about downloading content. So that's not your Media Composers running in the background and people editing. That's just if you want to pull content down. I think we mentioned last time, most people are just pulling down project files because they're pushing proxies up to the cloud to be able to edit with. But you'll be able to see that there. And then also we mentioned security. If you want to see who has accessed the system and when and who, you can do that by downloading a report here. So you'll see the session hours, like who has accessed it and for how long. You can download that report there as well. So you'll have a good visibility of what is the actual activity like on the system, like if you're managing your business. And then to create users is really simple as well. Typically think about how long would it take us to have built this, right? To have, brought that Nexus in, spun it up, have physical editors that we're going to, cable in, wire up, install the OS, install the, the window, the media composers, the licensing, all of those pieces. We've done that in a few clicks and in an hour, and suddenly we've got access to this system. And then your users, okay, you would suddenly have to go and make users at the OS level. You'd have to go and make users in the Nexus. You'd have to, if you wanted to upload and download content from off-site, you'd have to have that system set up, and you'd have to go create the users for that. In Edit on Demand, we can quite simply go and make a new user. So let's go and add Craig in here, for instance. And we'll go and make that user. When I hit submit, it will actually go and create that user for us everywhere. So the user will exist in all of the remote access components, all of the upload download tools, in the Nexus system itself, in the Windows machines, all of those places that you would have to manage that in a manual fashion. We can do that from one location, and it's available in all of them in one hit. So you can see we've got a bunch of active users, and then it's quite simply you'd share out a one-time password to those editors. They would go and log in, and the first time they log in, they'll be able to change that. One of the questions comes up about security. Okay, so you've got these users that you've created. What if you want to remove someone from the system? You don't want them to have access anymore. You can absolutely do that. You can either delete a user, or you can also reset the password, and then they won't have access to the system anymore. So really, easy and simple user management to be able to go in and manage your user accounts, and add users or remove users as well. And you can have, inside one single subscription, up to 60 users inside one system. And then your seats, which you can see here. And you can see I've actually got two subscriptions. So one was a previous one, so you've got good visibility of ones that we've had before, but also what ones are active. So I've got my active subscription, and I can see in this subscription I have multiple seats. One of them is currently active, so I can see that someone's on the system. And I can choose either to redeploy that if I needed to, for whatever reason. Maybe there was one of the systems was hanging a little bit. I could, flush that, get a new one up and running. And how quickly could you do that? Thinking about your business in traditional method, like what happens if a machine gets a little bit sticky, right? We have to hire another one in. Maybe we have one on the shelf, but even if we do, we probably have to spin that up, get it on the latest version again, get it all the licensing done. We can actually do that really easily just by a quick redeploy here and refresh the system for someone. Or I can stop it as well. If I don't want someone to have access and I'm remote, I can suddenly stop that machine from a remote location. So wherever I am, I can say, actually, these guys shouldn't be editing right now. Let's stop it, and it will close that down in a safe, secure manner and stop that machine for us. And then the system, this is the details you would share out, for the remote access, which we showed you last time, and also the upload download tool, which we also showed a little bit last time as well. You'd be able to share that stuff out. But the system area also gives you visibility of the actual backend services. Like, what is it? Everything up and running and okay? You get really easy view of the availability of the different services, and make sure that everything is running okay. And if it wasn't, and for any reason, the great thing is you also have Avid support available to you as part of your Edit on Demand subscription as well. So you'd be very quickly be able to tell if there was a problem in the region, and you'd be able to quickly get access to the support team if you ever needed for someone to take a look at any of that. And then if we go to our add-ons here, just a quick piece here, you can see what storage and what seats I currently have deployed in the system. When they start, also when they expire as well. So you can have things starting and expiring at different times. So you might want certain seats to start at one time and finish at another time. You can absolutely do that. And also, if you've built a system over a long period of time, you can actually see what have we added over time. So you can see all the different seats and storage we may have added to that system over time, and when they started and when they all finished as well. So you've got great visibility of what you've used and when. So that's how you would set up the base system. If you wanted to add additional seats, it's 15 to 30 minutes, and that seat will be up and running as well. So if someone comes in and needs something immediately, it's very easy to go and spin that stuff up for them, get them access really quickly and really simply as well. Once that's spun up, the only other bit of administration that you would need to do is to set up the Nexus, right? So we mentioned we've got our Nexus storage there. To do that, you would log into one of the clients, which we showed previously. So I've got my remote access tool here, my Peace over IP client that I can then log into a system. I can see my Nexus. This is my cloud storage that all of the editors share in the cloud. So all of the media composers are all working off this storage together. And I can carve this up with multiple workspaces, which for folks that don't know Nexus are like virtual drives. And so I can have multiple workspaces and with all of the, the different read-write permissions that I would expect from a Nexus system, but also have that available in the cloud. So the only other thing I would want to do is log into my Nexus and then have a look at my Nexus management console here, which I've already logged into, and go to workspaces and then start carving out my workspaces. So you can see my system, I've already set up 2 workspaces, but I could go and add another, and you can quite easily see, what storage has been used at the moment, what is left to be allocated against as well. So you can start carving up your Nexus as you would do with a traditional Nexus system. I think, again, one of the key things here is it's the power of the cloud, but with the workflows and tools that you know and trust from your on-prem workflows. So you could go and name the workspace. You could choose, how much capacity you want to give that, and then also the user management. And again, I mentioned the users. We created them once; they're available here to me, and then I can go and add, either no access or read access or read-write access to different workspaces. So if you wanted to, stop people accessing things, you still have all of that capability here from our Cloud Nexus as well. And so with that, that's kind of how simple and easy it is to get a system, spun up and ready for people to start uploading content and start editing. Just just 1 or 2 other things just to quickly touch on is, I think, we mentioned credits, right? And how to actually get credits. If I go, go back and let's go to our Edit on Demand page here. If you're wondering so I showed you how to deploy credits, but how do you get them? If you go to the Avid Edit on Demand webpage, you go to how to buy. You can obviously, I recommend contact your local Edit on Demand website. Go to the how to buy. You can see, what are the local partners in your region. You'll be able to reach out to those guys if you want to, purchase some credits. So please, take a look there. And then the last thing is, if you want to try this and you actually want to, I'll show you how easy it is to get it up and running. But if you want to try it, please just go to the Avid Edit on Demand website and just request a trial. You can see there's a button. I'll show you that again. There's a button out on the right there. Feel free to request a trial and get your hands on it and actually see how easy it is to deploy, and then how powerful it is once it's deployed and be able to access it. So with that, Craig, I'm going to hand it back to you.
That's great, Danny. Thanks a lot for lots and lots of great information there. So, Danny, we've had quite a few questions that have come in the course of the demo there. So, thank you so much to everyone who's been submitting questions. Please feel free to keep accessing them and adding them in. Before we maybe come on to some of the specifics around what you showed us there of how to deploy the system, I want to go back to something you talked about earlier on about total cost of ownership. Because this is something that comes up. I think a lot of people are obviously looking just now at what a cloud deployment, might mean for them. And I think one of the questions always is about how are people assessing what their actual total cost of ownership is for what they have today? Because I guess that's something that's quite difficult in some respects for them to quantify.
Yeah, so it's a great question, right? And I think it will be slightly different for different folks, but I think it's really about the big picture and thinking about the bigger picture. So it's not just what does it cost me to have a license and some storage, but what does it the floor space cost us, the rental of this facility? Like, do we want to keep doing that? And actually, it's starting that conversation of maybe we want to do that for some things, the really kind of key areas that we might need to be physically together on-prem, but actually for the stuff which we're having people remote into our system in our expensive building, do we really want to be doing that? And I think this starting to look at all of those kind of components, and it's not just about the rental, but the cost of like the calling, the power management, not just the economics around that, but also the I suppose the impact that has on things like the environment as well. Do we really want to be calling something that we're not even using, or we use a percentage of, like when we could just spin up the bits we need when we need them as well? So I think it's slightly different conversation for everyone. Everyone's going to have slightly different views on that, but I think it's an interesting thing for folks to start looking at, and to look at not just the cost of the components, but the whole conversation, and also speed. Like, how does it cost us to actually hire something in, get it shipped? How long does that take? What's that really costing us to build it, to maintain it, to manage it? All of those pieces. Like, I think it's looking at the entire picture. I think is something that people should start doing when they start looking at the cost of doing SaaS and on demand versus the cost of what they're doing today on prem. It's that that bigger story, that bigger picture piece.
Sure, lots of things there. When we come back to talk about the cloud in a second, but a question from James, who's been watching, saying, if your workflow involves other software other than Media Composer, for example, can it be installed alongside, such as third-party plugins or workflows that involve taking media into other editing applications? But it's just something we touched on in the previous webinar, Danny. But I wonder if you want to answer that.
It's worth touching on again. I think the short answer is yes. Like, we know that folks, even if they're hardened Media Composer, editors, like their offline workflow may involve other tools, other plugins, things like that. The short answer is yes. Today, it's a bit of a, you reach out to Avid and open a ticket. I mentioned we have a support method. So I would recommend talking to your representatives as you go through the trial process. What are the type of things you might need? And then we can have that discussion and discuss the way to kind of get that deployed in the right way for you. But this is something, that a key area that we're actually looking to kind of continue to develop out further as well. But the short answer is yes. If you've got other tools, come talk to us and we can figure out how to get it on the system together.
Yeah, so great, James. Thanks a lot for the question there. So Danny, returning there to talk about the cloud. So, if someone wants to go and, assess, edit on demand, they do the free trial, they think, okay, this is great, we want to go ahead with it. Are people committing like everything's got to be in the cloud at this point? Or is it the case that you could still have an on-prem solution, but you could connect it into the cloud as well? So it actually gives you a bit of flexibility.
Yeah, I think the folks that like try to do exactly what they do as they do it on-prem and try and do like a lift and shift to the cloud, it's not often the best way to do it, right? And for a number of reasons. The financial ones is one piece, but also just that's not really what the power of the cloud really kind of enables you to do. So there might actually still be, for certain parts of your workflow, then you may still want to have your on-prem Nexus and your on-prem Media Composers and have that kind of physical capability for a number of reasons, where you have people coming in to do finishing workflows where they need high-end monitoring, whether that's video or audio, and zero latency at in those kind of environments. But for the offline piece, where actually the folks are kind of remote anyways, actually maybe that makes sense to put that stuff into the cloud, and maybe either those workflows or particular jobs that might come in that you suddenly think, okay, how are we going to do this? Can we do this? Are we going to say no to this business and give it to someone else? Or we've got the talent, but we just don't have the capability? Actually, then suddenly on demand in the cloud is a great way for you to go and do that in a rapid and simple and easy way to facilitate that request. So I think the answer to your question, back to your question, Craig, the answer is, in short, is no. It might not be just a solely cloud, right? And take everything there. It might be a mix, and you don't have to pick necessarily one or the other. It could be a kind of a blended scenario that you might be working in. Having said that, there may be people that are starting to think, okay, I've got really great ideas to have a cloud first business, and that's really where I want to go, and I really want to innovate and drive. And Danny, I'm hearing you, and this all sounds great, and I want to go and do that. Actually, you may want to go completely SaaS, and so there are folks that will start doing that, and we are starting to see, the market start to shift in that direction. Yeah, that kind of preempted the next question that came in, Danny, was about, this is something actually, if you're thinking of as a startup, because you've got much lower cost to get going, because it's OPEX as opposed to CAPEX, I guess that's something that could provide you with a big advantage to get going as a business. Yeah, absolutely. So traditionally in the kind of the CAPEX piece, people are thinking, okay, we want to go and start our own post-production business, right? And they're either doing two things. They're either buying a bunch of kit and then renting some additional pieces when it comes in, or when additional business comes in, like thinking, okay, where do we get this capital from? Actually, you can say, we've got the talent, we've got the right people, we might not have the capital. So actually we can go and say yes to the job on the basis that we know that we can provision it very quickly with a small amount of capital. And as we get bigger and as we start to get a name for ourselves, then you can actually quickly then start spinning up and scaling up as you need, using Edit on Demand as well. So as you get bigger, Edit on Demand can get bigger with you. I think that's the the key factor to think about there. And you can start really small, so you don't have to have a huge outlay in order to actually start working. I think that's a key thing to think about.
And I think one of the things that comes through from the demo is you don't need any cloud experience to do it, and the setup of it is really, really simple.
Yeah, it was a few. Hopefully, I showed.
I mean, that was it. I mean, there's nothing else. It's nothing. We're not hiding anything here. That is it.
It was a few clicks, right? It was, I think it's like 3 web pages, and you hit go, and that's it. And then all of that is provisioned in an automated fashion for you. So it's very simple. It's very lightweight, very easy. And yeah, if I can do it, then I'm sure someone else can.
And I think a question that often comes up as well is around pricing. You know, Danny, I think we talked about total cost of ownership. So I mean, pricing is obviously something that we urge anyone to get in touch with us, and we can assess, you know, what they need and what they're looking for.
Yeah, the best thing to do is reach out to local Avid representative or local Avid partners, and they'll be able to give you the latest view on pricing in your region. And each of the regions and each of the credits have slightly different pricing. So the best way to approach is to go and speak to your local teams, and you'll get the most up-to-date local pricing.
You touched on security earlier on, Danny, so I just want to ask a little bit about that. You know, I think there is a view that has changed because of what's happened over the course of the last few years about security in the cloud. And I guess, you know, what people are looking at now is actually the cloud can be as secure, if potentially not more secure, than any solution you would deploy on-prem.
Yeah, I think I touched on it a little bit, but it's, you know, something that we could probably do a whole session on in itself. You really are leveraging, you know, it's not just where and how we deploy EOD is not in a you know, a little Avid data center that's managed by a couple of people, right? We're talking about leveraging some of the, you know, the high-end cloud utilizing some of the high-end cloud infrastructure from one of the largest providers, right? In Microsoft and Azure. So I think it's really kind of important that people recognize that they suddenly have, you know, the benefit of utilizing that infrastructure, which is highly secure. And then on top of that, you know, we do a whole bunch of work on the EOD component specifically, and do things like pen testing, where, you know, we have folks go and look at like how all these pieces fit together. And it's not just about security of the EOD, the individual EOD environment, but multiple. And so one of the things we do is ensure that, you know, there's no way that you can get from one nexus in one EOD to another nexus in another EOD. So you're not going to have to think, oh, someone's going to end up seeing, you know, some content that I've got in another system if they, you know, suddenly have access to one EOD system. It's, you know, that's not the case. So there's lots of things we do in terms of the way that it's built, deployed, managed, and we're constantly looking at that stuff. And I think it's a key part as we go forward to, you know, security is always evolving. You kind of have to evolve with it, and EOD will do that.
Yeah, so that's great, Danny. So at the moment, we've no more open questions, so that's terrific. Thanks very much. One thing I would say is that, you know, both Danny and myself have referred to a webinar that we ran a couple of weeks ago. So I would urge you to, you know, go and find that. It's available on YouTube and at some other sites as well. And that really goes into some of the practical ways that Edit on Demand can be accessed, can be used. So you can actually see Danny, you know, using a media composer in the cloud. So Danny, thank you very much. With this, I'll go back and share my screen, and we'll begin to wrap things up. So, you know, really just recapping on, you know, what we've looked at here about, you know, Edit on Demand. What is it? So as we've seen, it's a full SaaS cloud-based post-production solution. Hopefully we've illustrated really how super simple it is to set up and get going, and combined with that, you know, pricing and billing, it's very clear, you know, what your actual costs are going to be. And also it's very, very easy to, you know, amend, to add, to reduce the size and the scale of the system as well, you know, as you go through the project. Again, as we've shown, there's really no prior cloud knowledge needed. You know, it's very, very simple and straightforward to set up, and provides a lot of flexibility about running completely in the cloud, or even connecting that cloud-based system to an on-prem system as well. And it really is all about collaboration, opening up the ability of people to work together. In the previous webinar, we also showed some over-the-shoulder workflows where I can stream out from Media Composer, you know, to a device using SRT, where people could remotely access and view the timeline as well. And it really is, I mean, the theme of this webinar is about supercharging your business with Edit on Demand. It is about that ability to spin up and utilize resources when you need them, to give you that real business flexibility, moving from CapEx to OpEx as well. So hopefully that's given you a good overview of all of the different capabilities of Edit on Demand. And we also want to mention that Edit on Demand is actually being shown through the Avid World Vision Tour, which is ongoing at the moment. And there are still some dates, been running for a little while, but there are still some dates coming up here in Europe over the course of the next couple of weeks. So please, in the countries that are mentioned here, please get in touch with the local Avid office or the local reseller, and they'll be able to provide you with information where you can actually go and see Edit on Demand in action and see how easy it is, and also, make an assessment of hopefully it's the right fit for your business. And since we have everyone here, we will mention we do actually have another webinar running next week. And this is actually going to focus on our Maestro graphics. So you see the webinar there called Let's Get Graphical. That's happening next Tuesday. At the times available here, we are running a session for European time zone and a session for the Americas time zone. So again, you can register for that as of today. Now, if you want to find out any more about anything that we've talked about, this is the web page, of course, that Danny showed earlier on, then please go to avid.com/edit-on-demand, and there you can find out all of the information, or feel free to reach out to Danny or myself, through Avid, through social media, and we'd be more than happy to answer any questions. And as Danny mentioned earlier on, if you want to try it out, please request a trial, and we can see if we can get things sorted out for you. But for now, from Avid, from Danny, and from myself, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and to wish you a good rest of your day. Thanks very much, and goodbye.